last week I was speaking about Ghostrunner 2. I had not finished Ghostrunner 2. I had actually only played maybe about a third of it. I then
still
pretty much finished Ghostrunner 2 like on that day after the recording.
Just went off and just played the heck
I was
out
just
of it.
like, yeah.
Amazing.
So yeah, my review's up on GameSpot now. I think it's a good game. I think it's a really good game when it's focusing on continuing or delivering the same stuff that made especially the first game so like loved. And I think it very much loses its way when it's trying to be a bigger AAA type experience or trying new ideas that like absolutely don't work. So
yeah,
what I mean is, for the most part, you're playing these very linear levels. You're just moving from one platforming section to one combat section, and keep that going for over and over. And that sort of cadence, that sort of design is really, really fun, because I think the platforming is sublime. The parkour, like first-person action, is really good. The tools they give you, the puzzles they present to you, are just really fun to engage with. Like very early on, you get this like shuriken that can be used to enable or disable switches, or it can be used on certain surfaces to create like a grapple point. So you get these sections where it's like you're wall running and you have to jump and you have to shuriken to a next wall and then grapple to it quickly to wall run immediately. And then you have to shuriken like a switch to turn on a fan so that when you jump off that wall, like you hit that fan. Like these little micro decisions that you have to make very quickly are just very fun and rewarding. There's a few other abilities, like one where you can leave a clone of yourself in place, and then you go invisible, and another where you've got like a sort of like a Jedi force push. And in each of the levels those are introduced, there are very cool puzzles for each. Like they definitely theme the level around you getting that ability and kind of showing you the different ways it can be used. But then I feel like the levels after that don't really use them that much anymore. The shuriken is definitely the one you'll end up using the most.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a bit disappointing, but they do allow you to do some cool things in combat, like stealthing up can really let you get around a big enemy and take him out very quickly, or like, as most of these combat encounters, they take place over very precarious ledges. So having a little force push is very useful if someone gets close to that ledge. Where things start to go a bit wrong is about halfway through, you leave the main area of the game called Dharma Tower, which is like this. Most of the game, all of the first game, all of the first game and most of this game take place in this tower where like all of humanity is kind of settled. There's been this like calamity that's happened early on in history, and basically the outside world is basically inhabitable. So this is the first time you get to see the outside. You get a motorbike and you go through this like really cool like set piece sequence where you're escaping from the tower and like literally riding on the side of the tower down to the ground. It's very cool. The problem there is that you are then thrust into about 2 or 3 levels where it turns into a pseudo open world game. You've got the motorbike and you can kind of move in whatever direction you want in this like sort of small hub world. And then you're given like 3 or 4 objectives to complete that then can be completed in any order. The problem is this world is like extremely dead. So you're just riding around it and going from one marker to the other. And because of how open it is, everything feels a little less focused. Like it doesn't feel as bespoke or fine-tuned when you're moving between these areas, especially when it comes to platforming. So those sections are not that great. They also last forever. The one level is the longest by far at an hour, where most stages prior to that are maybe half an hour. So yeah, I just really don't think that moment those moments work at all. And it's clear that it's like this sort of ambition, like, okay, we're going to move away from this linear structure to try and get something more big and expansive, and it just kind of doesn't work, I don't think. There are certain moments that are cool, like when you're driving on a highway and there's like a laser bridge in front of you. You have to do this thing where you launch off your bike forward and let the bike run through the lasers, and then you grapple back towards your bike to get back on it, which is like, it feels really good. Like it always feels good. And there's also a boss fight in this open world that takes place while you're using your bike that is just incredible. It's the scale of it is unbelievable. It's really, really fun. I don't want to talk about it because if people still want to play this game, it was a big like, oh my God, am I really going to have to fight that thing moment? It was really cool. The same can be said for a lot of the boss fights in the game itself. You fight these antagonists called the Ashura. There are like 4 of them.
Yeah.
You fight the first one in the very first level. It's a terrible boss fight that sets a bad precedent for what are like really, really good ones that come later. I think, you do most of them near the end of the game, but they're all like big skill checks on your understanding of both movement and combat.
Yeah.
And I think they're very good because they're very challenging, but they're also not frustrating because they've got like checkpointing within the boss fight itself. So if you get a guy down to like half health and you die, you're not going to start from the beginning again if you take a hit, which is especially important considering you die in a single hit, you know what I mean? So I just think they're really, really cool boss fights that really test your abilities in interesting ways. So yeah, overall, I like Ghostrunner. I think Ghostrunner 2 is very good. I think, it could have been a bit more focused, but I'm not going to fault them for at least trying something new. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
Like it's a pity that it didn't work out, but at the very least, most of the game is still the same sort of like platforming and action from the first game, and that stuff is really good. It's
I mean, I haven't played the game, so obviously what is my opinion counts, but I do think, like you touched on, of like it's good of them to try evolve the formula, but I think it's very difficult to make an open world platformer a thing, if that makes sense. Like I think the closest or the best example that comes to mind is Bowser's Fury. It's not like a fully open world Mario game, but it is that sort of idea of you can go anywhere. And the trade-off there is that it's a big open world, I guess, but it's like got little hubs with levels within this open world. It's like they nailed it there, but it's on such a small scale as well. I mean, that game you can finish in like 2-3 hours, and it's kind of experimental. So I wonder, like, I'm almost curious if this team looked at that as an example at all, or is it just a thing of like, we've got our own thing, we're gonna make an open world and see how we go, even if it's just something we throw in at the end of the game, just as a way to evolve the formula. So
I'm actually curious because I hadn't thought of that comparison, and it's quite apt. It is, because that is essentially what it is. It's like this little open world hub where
you can go do things.
You can move around the hub, and there's different stuff. I mean, it's not so different here like it is in Mario, but like I wouldn't be surprised if they looked at that and thought, oh, that's an interesting way to go about that.
Because to go back to that, I think that absolutely works on Mario, and I'm convinced that they saw the positive reception of that, and one of the Mario games in the future will be an open world game where it is just hub after hub, and you can tackle them in whatever order you want, and I think it will work. But I mean, that's Nintendo doing Mario, which they've done for decades now. Maybe Ghostrunner 3, for example, it is like, okay, what lessons can we learn? How can we, we're not going to can the open world necessarily, but we'll figure out how to make it work in a way that makes sense. But yeah, it's funny because I think it's not only a platforming thing. I think the moment you go open world in any game, like you hit the nail on the head where so many open world games have this problem of they just feel empty. It's a recent example, Starfield. They go, it's 1,000 planets, and some people go, 1,000 planets, and I immediately switch off because I think there's no ways you can physically make each of those 1,000 planets, interesting and varied and have their own distinct, like you can definitely do not the bare minimum, but I mean, you can tick the box of like, there's 1,000 planets. 900 of those planets have at least one outpost and one quest, which is a huge ask in itself. But at no point am I going to go to Watercool and have a conversation with you, be like, yo, have you found this specific planet? Oh my God, there's like this dream quest line there. There's this whole, like, you know what I mean? It's too big and too ambitious to make it interesting. So I think it's funny that open world does have that problem, and maybe Ghostrunner doesn't work with open world. I don't know, but it's interesting that they tried that.
Yeah, I can't fault them for trying something. Like I do feel like if they just made a second game that was just linear again, or was just in the same setting, especially again with the same sorts of powers, like people would be like, okay, this is more of the same and it's probably good, but like, we've played this again. So I feel like they had to try something. I just don't think that was the right move. And I agree with you. I do hope they use that as a learning experience for maybe if they make another one, to be like, okay, cool. Well, that didn't work. How can we, remedy that? And to be fair, that is my opinion of the open world. I've seen reviews, like I think IGN gave it a 9, where they did not have that problem with that section. So like subjectively, there's a lot of people that may have a completely conflicting opinion with mine when it comes to those sections. So it really depends on how it's received. I just didn't vibe with them at all. As soon as I was in that section, I immediately craved being back in the tower and just being on this like focused path, because I think Ghostrunner works best when the pace is really high. So when you're on a path where you can see each new step and you're just executing those, it feels a lot better than when you're in this semi-open world that cohesively doesn't let you get that same pace going again, And I think that's a problem Mario's definitely solved, but that takes a lot of very careful design. It's not something that you can just be like, cool, well, these mechanics work. They'll work in an open world. It's absolutely not the case.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, that's Ghostrunner 2. Still good. I still think you would really like it.
I'll definitely enjoy it. I have no doubts about that.